Katie, you found the chat box. So guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat box and we will kind of answer those as we go, and should have a little bit of time at the end to ask questions. I do have a copy of this book, so if anybody wants to read it or borrow it, I'd be happy to share with you. So thanks for logging in. Hopefully you'll learn something new and helpful and interesting today. We're just going to review the book, The Deepest Well by Nadine Burke-Harris. And we're going to give a brief summary, show you a sample of her ACE questionnaire, then kind of identify what those numbers mean. And then towards the end, we'll look at some of the treatments and hopefully some prevention techniques, especially as they relate to how the coaching model works and what we're doing there at home. And some of them we have found have tied into trainings that we've recently had. So Stacey, go ahead and tell us a little more about Dr. Harris.
We kind of wrote this book to teach how she started out as a person. And I'm hearing an echo. Is that just me, or can you hear
it too? Maybe if I turn my volume down. Try now.
So her first job was in San Francisco, and her boss just sort of gave her this task to create programs that were specifically designed to address health disparities in their city. And then he kind of just left and went on vacation, and she just started to have to come up with things to try to address that. And she kind of had a hunch that something else was going on that was causing the health issues in the kids that she was seeing. And then as the ACEs study came out, she started to try to kind of connect the dots between ACEs and long-term health that she was seeing with her kids.
So for those of you that are not familiar with ACEs, we're just going to review quickly a little 5-minute video if I can figure out how to get it going. Kind of gives you the gist of the book and the program and the findings.
Is it not going for you, Gina?
I can hear it and see it. Can you guys?
Oh, I can hear it, but I can't see it.
Okay.
What does your parents' divorce have to do with your...
Any suggestions, anyone?
Could you stop sharing the slideshow and start sharing the other screen that you're on? Maybe
it's embedded in the slideshow, but I can probably pull it up elsewhere. Okay, now what do you see?
I'm still seeing the "where did our understanding of ACEs come from" slide. I don't know if other people are seeing something else, but that's what I'm seeing.
Stop share.
Yeah, try that.
Okay. This one. How about now?
What does your parents' divorce have to do with your risk for heart disease?
Yes, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
If your mother had a drinking problem when you were growing up, are you more likely to suffer from depression as an adult? Here's what you should know about ACEs. ACEs stand for Adverse Childhood Experiences, extremely stressful events that can happen to a child growing up. Some experiences are so stressful that they can alter brain development, as well as the immune system, increasing the risk of lifelong health and social problems in adulthood. The term comes from the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, landmark research that shed new light on the root cause of everything from stroke and liver disease to substance abuse and mental illness. In the late 1990s, an epidemiologist from the Centers for Disease Control and a preventive medicine doctor at Kaiser Permanente set out to understand the association between childhood experience and lifelong health. They asked over 17,000 people in the Kaiser Health Plan in San Diego about their health history, as well as difficult questions about their experiences growing up. Anda and Felitti tallied up 10 different kinds of adversity in this largely middle-class and college-educated population. They were stunned to see how common ACEs were. 21% of all respondents were sexually abused as children. 19% grew up with someone who suffered mental illness. 28% had been physically abused. And 2 out of 3 respondents had experienced at least one ACE. The researchers next looked at how someone's ACE score, or the number of adversities they experienced, related to a wide array of serious health and social problems. They saw that the more ACEs someone had, the greater their risk for poor outcomes compared with someone with no ACEs. Someone with an ACE score of 4 had twice the risk of heart disease and cancer. Someone with an ACE score of 5 had an 8 times greater chance of being an alcoholic. And those with an ACE score of 6 or more, on average, died 20 years earlier. With every major problem they looked at in the ACE study, the risk went up for each additional adverse experience in childhood. As Dr. Robert Anda says, what's predictable is preventable. It's important to remember that ACEs are not destiny. ACEs are a tool for understanding the health of a population as a whole. For individuals, an ACE score can be a tool for understanding their own risk for health and social problems and empower them to make changes for themselves and their children. ACEs tend to get passed down from generation to generation and are common across all income levels, races, and cultures. But increasingly, people of all different professions and backgrounds are coming together to discuss how ACEs affect their communities. They're finding new ways to treat and prevent ACEs. Many doctors are starting to screen their patients for ACEs as part of their medical history. More schools are becoming trauma-informed, considering the source of problem behavior when disciplining their students, instead of immediately suspending or expelling them. To learn more about interrupting the cycle of adversity and improving health and well-being for the next generation, please visit kpjrfilms.co.
So Dr. Burke-Harris was working on kind of connecting these dots in her pediatric practice when the ACEs study was done. And she was one of the first healthcare professionals who kind of was trying to put this research into practice. She was actually encouraged personally by who was then the Attorney General of California, Kamala Harris. And Dr. Burke-Harris is now the Surgeon General of California.
So this is a sample of Dr. Burke-Harris's ACE questionnaire that was included in the video. This one is a little bit different.
She includes the first 10 ACE questions, and then she adds the second set, which if you look in different places, they call this the pair of ACEs, where there's 2 different sets. And the second set is basically kind of environmental stressors that have also been shown to cause distress and long-term health issues. She recommends that all pediatricians screen for ACEs, and she has this particular one available online to download and use for free. But she also cautions that anyone who's not a qualified mental health practitioner to not use this in terms of asking which ones people have. But she just kind of advocates to ask, what's your number? And she'll use the first one plus the second one.
So I'm sure you guys were reading through some of those questions on the video, but if you flip through those real quick, kind of get a mental idea of what your score would be, maybe from growing up or your children, then maybe it'd be a little more applicable as we go through here and talk some more about these. So the next question then, now what? So we, as early interventionists, we've got this information. As Stacy said, we're not trained to do a whole lot about it. So what are we gonna do? Well, the first thing we need to do right here is reassure the family. They're not alone. Adversity happens to all groups of people, just like in the video, all races and creeds. And so just letting them know that they are not alone is kind of the first step.
And Dr. Burke Harris does a good job in this book to talk about how if you're a parent and you have ACEs, you kind of have this double challenge because you have to take care of yourself and sort of try to heal the effects of your own ACEs, but you're also trying to protect your child at the same time.
So we're going to watch a little video of her. She talks about parents as a buffer, because the purpose is not for us to take this information and then blame people or circumstances. It really is to look at the root of what has happened and then to provide a safe, stable, and nurturing relationship for these kids. So let me see if I can stop sharing this, figure out. There she is. Can you guys see it?
Not yet. Can you share it with us?
Okay, let me try again. Ay, ay, ay. This is for the technology challenged. Okay, so I'm gonna go to share screen. Here's the video and share. That's not even the right video this time.
I see a video, but not the one you had.
Okay, so at least I've got the stop sharing. Sorry, guys.
What does your parents' divorce have to do with your risk for heart disease?
I can't
If
even
your
get
mother had a
back to
drinking
the
problem
video.
when you were growing up, are you more likely to suffer from depression?
Okay, I'm gonna get out of that one. Get out of that one. Okay, Dr. Burke Harris and play. Go here. Share screen.
There we go.
Okay, let me get it to a little snippet here where she's going to talk about parents as a buffer. Right there. Let me see if I can figure out how to make it bigger.
We wouldn't prepare, we wouldn't, pay attention, all of that kind of.
Oh, Jana.
Maybe just once you get it going, leave it right there. So
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it small.
Sounds good.
Monica is recording this. So you can always go back in and look at it on your own if you'd like.
For children in particular, that can be something like a natural disaster, right? Or a the death of a loved one, where there may be some time where that child experiences, for example, developmental regression, maybe they're back to bedwetting, something like that. But with the buffering presence of safe, stable, and nurturing relationships, the body actually comes back to homeostasis. It actually comes back into balance. And these hormones and biological processes don't persist. And we go back to normal. But with toxic stress, the difference is that when children are exposed to severe or prolonged stressors, and they don't have adequate buffering from safe, stable, and nurturing relationships, that leads to long-term changes in our biological systems, and that is what is known as the toxic stress response, and that's what leads to long-term health problems.
So you also talk about some of the remedies.
Yeah.
And that there are 6 really important key pieces. I want to focus on just one, healthy relationships. Talk about all 6, but at Safe and Sound, we are so supportive of families really trying to be, as you talk about, that buffer, that parental buffer, and the importance of that.
Yeah.
So talk about the 6 components of the remedy, the antidote to toxic stress, and why, from a science perspective, they work, and particularly why it's so important to have that parental buffer.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, the remedies are my favorite part, right? Because, folks, particularly who hear about, this research in this field of work, they're like, oh my goodness, childhood adversity, isn't that so stressful? It's gloom and doom. And I'm just like, oh no, this for me is fundamentally hopeful work. Because again, when we understand the mechanism, right? That's when we get to have fun, mess around, and figure out, like, how do we disrupt these mechanisms? And in the deepest well, I talk about 6 things that as our team scour the literature, and I will say, the reason that I founded the Center for Youth Wellness is that as a pediatrician trying to care for my patients, right, I didn't have any clinical protocols. I didn't have any prescribed treatments or anything like that. All I learned in residency was, you can either refer them to a mental health provider, or you can refer them to a social worker. But, if kids are experiencing adversity, it's kind of, hashtag not my job, right? and so the reason I created the Center for Youth Wellness is because I feel like I'm probably not the only pediatrician who doesn't feel like they have adequate information and training about how to address this issue. So our research team at the Center for Youth Wellness literally scoured the literature. We looked at more than 16,000 journal articles. That's how much we love this science, okay? And what we found is that the science, the things that make the biggest difference in the toxic stress response are sleep, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness, mental health, and healthy relationships. And
So she lists those 6 things in the book also. She doesn't really explain a whole lot more about any of those, but we will talk a little bit more about them in a minute. But those are kind of the 6 things that they have found really make a difference.
What we found was that listening to and reading the book, there were many parallels between Dr. Burke Harris and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. And even with Wednesday's Lunch and Learn through Healthy Families.
The 6 things we will get back to again.
Yeah, I think it might be the next slide.
There'll be a slide. So yeah, this one is kind of explaining, we're kind of seeing some echoes from this approach and other things that we have learned about. And just to kind of explain like where she's coming from, the title of her book, The Deepest Well, she tells the story of the development of germ theory. and the stories that people in England were dying of cholera. And one doctor had this theory that it was the well that was contaminated. And most people just assumed that illnesses were caused from just breathing bad air. So he closed this well, and lo and behold, the cases of cholera were reduced. And so she says, and this is a quote from her book, I had inspected all the wells in all the towns and discovered that not only were they deeper than I had ever imagined, but more important, they were all connected.
So next up, awareness, treatment, and prevention. I'm going to start with awareness. So we have our mental ACE score. You guys went through and found yours. And now we know the root of the adversity. So now it's time to build resilience, which gets me back to another video. So give me a minute.
And while you are, I'll just mention that this treatment, the idea of treatment and prevention can sometimes overlap a little bit, because if we're promoting treatment in a parent, then guess what? We're also working for prevention of ACEs for their child. And we're mostly kind of in our work focused on promoting, referring for treatment, but it's not something that we are actively usually doing. What we're doing is more a lot of the prevention work and awareness work.
Can you see it?
Yes, that looks great.
Whoop, whoop.
Resilience is about overcoming adversity. It's about how you think and how you view the world. When something bad happens to you, do you see it as a catastrophe, or do you see it as an opportunity? Are you able to tell the difference between something that's a real tiger versus something that just feels like a tiger? Because stress is designed into our bodies so that we can deal with the tiger that's going to attack us, right? And the key is that you have to be able to tell the difference between something that can really chew your face off or just feels like it might. The resilience mindset can tell the difference between something real and something that only worries you. Unconditional love gives human beings the security that allows them to move forward and to take chances. That's the bottom line of being able to handle almost anything. I am loved, I am valued, and people know who I am inside. That allows people to thrive through good and bad times, and that's what resilience is.
So here again on the next slide is that list of 6 things. And
Yeah, because that resilience is a skill that's going to be learned, right? It doesn't come natural. So that comes into our treatment. And in the video, she talked about those 6 things. So here they are. And on top of that,
can you share your screen?
oh, I'm sorry. Of course I can. Yay. There we go. Here are those 6. Can you see it?
Yeah. You want to do the, there you go.
There.
So she says, the more of these 6 things you do, the more you'll reduce stress hormones, reduce inflammation, enhance neuroplasticity, and delay cellular aging.
Then on top of that, she recommends integrative therapy for anyone that's involved in attachment with the child. So thinking about our visits with childcare providers, grandparents, foster parents.
And she really emphasizes the quality of the relationship and the health of the attachment between the parent and the child. And so that is one of the reasons that she will often refer to mental health, especially trauma informed mental health and child parent psychotherapy.
All right, let's get into some treatment. Prevention and treatment. So Stacy had talked about reducing that dose of adversity for kids, increasing the caregiver's ability to be that buffer, promoting safe, stable, and nurturing relationships, just to level the playing field a little bit. So,
And again, it kind of like it echoes lots of other things that we
yes.
have talked about, like Tina Payne Bryson, like promoting first relationships, like Leslie, like ABC approach, even things like Ellen Satter, where we're focusing on that relationship. So one of the organizations that she kind of became affiliated with is called the Turnaround USA. And there's
Want me to
the,
open that link up, Stacy?
you can pull it up if you want to, unless it's,
It really is just, it shows a bigger version. If you guys can see the building blocks, okay, we'll leave it there.
and if you go to the website, if you click on each of those blocks, it'll give you more information about that concept. But this is one of the first organizations that she kind of became affiliated with to try to build a program to address.
And clearly you guys can see the foundation: attachment, stress management, self-regulation, right? We can't build upon a shaky foundation. So that's what we're going into the homes to help these families with, right? Okay, next up is the Harvard Center on the Developing Child.
And it's another department that she's kind of affiliated with, and is focused on preventing ACEs and reducing their effects by strengthening the parent-child relationship.
And I'll go ahead and pull this one up so you guys can see the resources
If
here.
you haven't looked at this particular site, there's extensive amounts of great resources on this site.
Yeah, there is so much. But you notice, I mean, as soon as I pull it up, very first thing, stress and resilience, how toxic stress affects us and what we can do about it. So it's just a ton.
There's downloadable things. Keep going. Yeah. There's videos. There's podcasts that are linked on here. There's just so much stuff.
There's so much on there for multiple ages.
Yeah.
Look, still going.
Mm-hmm.
ACEs, toxic stress, frequently asked questions. So I could keep going and going, but let's move on because we've got plenty of good resources here.
And that's kind of where in the book where the resources end, but we just kind of took it a little bit more and found some more kind of stuff that's really pertaining to our agency and our community. And if anyone remembers going to this 3-day training in 2012 for promoting first relationships, this is totally all about what preventing ACEs starts with. And all of the handouts from this training are in the resource folder if you want to go back and look and use any of these.
And I can click on that and we can look at it some more, but I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. So we can come back to that maybe if we have time. So let's keep going. All right, those protective factors. Anyone that went to the Lunch and Learn Wednesday with Healthy Families, that was something that came up. So here's these protective factors: social, emotional competence, social connections, concrete support, resilience, again, keeps coming up over and over. Knowledge of parent and child development, again, that's that. Attachment. So think about which of those that we can bring into the home when we come in to coach our families. Okay, turning point. this is a fantastic resource that Stacy has found. Again, to refer back to that Lunch and Learn, they were talking about referring families to Healthy Families, either when they're pregnant or soon after the baby was born, to that 3 months. And we don't always get them that soon. So this might be an option. Stacy, do you want me to go ahead and click on and open that up, or do you just want to go through it?
If I'm not sure if it'll easily go to it, so I'll just kind of mention. It's
Okay.
it's an agency that's sponsored by KU Med, and they have in non-COVID times they have in-person classes and seminars and support groups and all kinds of things that are free. And at this point, they just have a lot of virtual things. And if you go to their website and each one of these little bullet points here, you click on, and it has more information about how to seek these things for yourself or your family. And like I said, they're free to anyone in the community that is experiencing a serious health condition or a chronic health condition, and they're including COVID-19 in that.
The piece that I liked was this kind of the hope and optimism, when they were talking about that resilience. It kind of talks about accepting kind of your new reality, and then, okay, what are we going to do about it? And it kind of goes back to that glass half full, glass half empty type thing. When you're faced with all these adversities, it's really, really easy to lose hope. So I found that part good. Okay, so this is a link to Dr. Perry. It was provided to us from the Greenbush Social Emotional Professional Learning. So these are going to come in our Friday all calls. There'll be a link. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but I would like to show just a little snippet so you guys know what to expect. So you can see if you are interested in those or not. So let me get this share up.
Oh, it was. We could see it the way you had it.
Oh, you did?
Mhm.
Oh, geez. So how am I going to get back to it now? Okay. There we go.
Welcome, everybody. This is Dr. Bruce Perry, and I'm here to spend about 15 minutes talking to you about stress,
Can you see it?
distress, and resilience. This little mini
You
webinar
guys.
is a component of the Neurosequential Network. Welcome, everybody, to the community's effort to respond to some of the challenges posed by the current COVID-19 pandemic. We have been, like many others, fielding many questions
Oh, for the love of God.
about
We got it. That was perfect.
It was?
anxiety,
Yeah.
stress, the distress that have been a core element of this ever-changing crisis. And we have some thoughts that we think will help you as you
Got it.
work with your organizations, work with your clients, work with your family, and provide leadership in your community. So those of you who want to learn more about what we're doing, you can get that information at the website that is indicated on this slide. We've started this process by having a whole set of issues discussed and presented at a large community meeting. We're now going to hone in and have a number of shorter learning opportunities. And today I'm going to focus on stress and stress activation. The key message, I think, that we have to get across to people we work with is that you really shouldn't be afraid of stress. Stress is essentially just a demand on some part of our body's physiology that is an inevitable element of everyday life.
So then he goes on to talk about what is normal everyday stress and then what is toxic stress. So it was a pretty good one. He gets into some of the science of it as well. So if you're interested in that, I felt like it was a pretty good one.
And it's kind of, I think it reminds me, it's a little bit similar to whole brain child stuff and also polyvagal theory. If you've looked at any of that stuff from Stephen Porges, and he starts putting charts and things up there that were kind of cool to look at. And there's a bunch of them, like you saw on the list, that was, I think, number 3. And I think it ends up being, there's like 10 or 12 different videos that you can look at.
Okay, this one is my personal favorite, this Karen Young.
Okay.
Stacy also put this in the resource folder, right, Stacy?
Yeah, but before we go to that,
Hmm?
they've sent out the second, Greenbush sent out the second email.
Oh, uh-huh.
I don't know if it was today or last week. Anyway, the second one, they included not a video, but a podcast called Ologies. And the particular one was on gratitude. And I listened to it and it's phenomenal. So just how to practice gratitude and its benefits for mental health and it was a great podcast.
The whole podcast is interesting, that Ologies.
Ologies, yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Karen Young, you can see on this little resource is the 20 practical, powerful strategies. This is awesome.
Gina, you'll need to share your screen though.
Oh, for the love of God. Jeez.
Thank you for doing all the technical stuff, Gina.
Because I'm doing so brilliant of a job. Okay. Current slideshow.
So Karen Young has a blog, and I think she has a podcast too. And she has all kinds of stuff about childhood anxiety, and it's phenomenal stuff. And she has like guest bloggers and stuff too. But she has this one particular article up that I thought was great for resources related to what we're talking about today.
And again, look at this. Resiliency, it's all over. And that's where we're coming in and teaching these families, again, to go back to that hope and optimism. It's there. And we're here to teach you how to attach with your child and be that buffer. Here's some more of her stuff.
And in the article, for each bullet point, she has a little description of maybe an example or how to do this, or like some activity to embed it into.
Mm-hmm. And some of the things that kind of spoke to me were some recent visits with Hannah, like this don't rush to the rescue. A lot of our families really want to just fix everything, but we're meeting them where they are. We're letting them kind of come down here and talk, and we're just sitting with them and building that attachment, which takes me to resilience is a skill. It can be taught and learned. And Tracy has coached us a lot. Just showing up is all that families need sometimes. A big part of resilience is their belief in themselves. And so when we show parents how to do that for themselves by saying things like, wow, you're such a good mom, or I'm so glad you were able to be here with us today, Dad. We really like it when you're here. Helps them believe in themselves.
And to teach their kids that they can believe in themselves too.
So I'm going to stop sharing and let's look down here at the chat, see what questions we got. Katie says she is super excited for this. She loves the book. Susie would like to borrow it. I'll bring it to you Wednesday, Susie. And Monica has copies. Can I turn it up? Oh, I should have looked at that later. And then can you read the list of those 6 things again? Absolutely. I can go back to that. Close. Means I got to share my screen again, huh?
And we'll put this whole slideshow up in the resource folder too, if you want to go back and look at stuff.
There they are. Can you see it?
Yep.
Oops. Sleep, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness, mental health, healthy adult relationships. In Dr. Burke Harris's work, you'll see exercise come up a lot. And she does talk a lot about the neurobiology behind it with some of those neuroreceptors and dopamine and serotonin increasing, and how all those are just mood lifters, more than it is just getting up and moving around.
And then Kelly wants to see the ACE questionnaire again. I think that's a great
Alrighty. The ACE questionnaire again is right here from the current slide. Oh my Lord.
And I think this one's up too, or if it's not, we'll put it up. Because like I said, she made it free and downloadable.
The one online is, I mean, you'll probably see a couple of them floating around in our resources too. And this one is a little different, like Stacy mentioned, because she adds on that section 2 down there, so that you kind of have your mental ACE score, but then you can kind of combine it with the section 2, show how it compounds.
Did you find it? If
Oh,
you
I'm
did
sorry. Am I not sharing my screen again?
yet.
Shocker. Shocker. Here we go.
Maybe, yeah, I was gonna say, see if we can make it a little bigger because it is pretty small. That looks good.
There we go.
What else? Anything else? Yeah, so she'll say, like, let's say that somebody has 2 of the first and maybe 1 of in the second section. So she'll say their ACE is 2 plus 1.
Okay, what else we got? Can we see the ACEs again? That was Kelly. So Stacy, I didn't pull up the resource folder, but you put these in resources, and then is it a mental health folder?
I do not remember. Do you want to maybe pull up the resource and share it, and we can maybe just find it real quick? Because I don't know where it is. Monica says, have you used the ACEs yet? And if not, how might you anticipate using this to help support you?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stacy.
I was going to say, I have not used it yet. Other than just to keep in mind that these are things that happen, and that, you know, she makes a point to say that especially families from higher income communities do a pretty good job of trying to hide their ACEs. And just sort of realizing that they're there, and you know, we may not specifically ask about which ones. Yeah, and Kelly's saying taking the score into consideration with eligibility, but just
We did. That's just what I was going to say. Kelly and I had a child that we thought, well, you look pretty good, but oh my goodness, all this trauma, there's bound to be something. But we ended up qualifying one child that was in foster care because of the ACEs. And then we had another child that had the exact same score, but we weren't seeing anything. So we didn't feel like it would have been appropriate, but we definitely had that in the back of our mind. Well, shocker, I can't get that to pull up either.
I wonder if I can share my screen.
It's funny because Pendello was calling me as we're chatting because I couldn't get this to pull up. I can't get logged in, but let me try one more time.
Hey, this is Monica. I was just going to say, can you guys put in the chat box if you're familiar with the ACEs, very familiar, not very familiar, so we can kind of get an idea of where you are in terms of knowing what information is on the ACEs and how it might help support you.
Yeah, Stacy, I think if you're able, go ahead and share. It keeps telling me it's not accessible, the P drive.
So,
Hey, this is Lori. I'm curious how you asked that question at the eval because I think that would be really hard. Did you just ask? I'd like to go through your ACEs score.
No. We went through it like mentally in our minds. We didn't bring it up at all. But as the family was talking about birth trauma and this parent was in and out of jail and different caregivers frequently. So we just did that mentally.
No, Dana, we asked the questions. I remember. We did it after the health history, and then we just said, we could ask my teacher questions, and they didn't say it was like ACEs.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of the other one then. The
Or
other
maybe
one that we didn't, and then we kind of drove around the corner and chatted about it.
And and it's quite possible that I could be confusing it with a different kiddo that Meredith and I did, but I think I just kind of led into the questions, but I didn't say what it was. And
Well,
it was just like,
Kelly,
no,
I know we talked about that one you and Meredith had. Did you guys end up qualifying that child?
yes.
And
Yes.
was it based on the ACEs or combination, or how did you determine?
I don't remember. You're asking me to go back a long way.
I know, right? Mhm. And we've had a lot of conversations about this, Lori, because it can be uncomfortable and we're not really trained to handle those. So it's not questions that you want to just bring up, but I think some of them are important to at least review. Okay, Stacy, looks like you've got it on there. So you went to resources, infant mental health, ACEs. And is that where you put Dr. Young?
that is a good question.
It doesn't look like it's in there. I see ACEs.
Let me find it. You know what I might do is just create a folder from today's Lunch and Learn and put it in there. So everything's kind of
All
together.
in one. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Teresa says she's familiar with the ACEs. She's used it with foster family to help them understand what may be impacting. They were asking questions and struggling and knew the child's history. It helped them greatly in understanding what may be impacting the child and reasons for strategy supports. Teresa, is there anything you could share with Lori about how maybe you initiated that conversation? Nope, she might have stepped
Yeah.
away.
Sorry, I
Oh,
was listening but not standing right at my surface row.
Well, Lori was kind of asking, how do you initiate that conversation? So do you want to share how
Well-
it worked with this family?
Yeah, this one was easy because the family was starting to go down all kinds of rabbit holes. And I could see they were having some unrealistic expectations just because they lacked that understanding. And so as we had discussions, I then just raised this. As Monica and I think Tracy pointed out at a certain time, this is easier because it's with the foster family. So it wasn't in a position where a family could feel like they're being held responsible for something. So I think that makes a big difference. But as they were, struggling and raising questions and thinking we need to go this path, that path, that path. And, I had talked about this. And so then they were like, well, okay, let's look at it. Let's see if that does tell us something. And when they went through and answered the questions, because they did very much know his history, the foster mom just started crying because she then got it.
Mm-hmm.
She totally understood why they're seeing what they're seeing. And then they were, okay, tell us, okay, then I think they were really feeling like this isn't a rabbit hole, this is a path that can give support.
Well, I think then that goes back to Kay is asking, okay, now we should have a plan if we're going to go through this a little bit. and some people have a higher score. We were just talking about this, Kay, that Healthy Families is great for those new ones, but that turning point that Stacy found at KU, it does look like a good resource, but it's really more for kids who are medically fragile and parents that are dealing with the trauma of that. So yeah, ABC would be great for those kids with Leslie. And then Monica's just reminding him, we don't just leave them with a score. So what our plan was is just to kind of introduce to families, yep, we've got some hard times. Yep, you've been through some things. Everybody's been through it. Let's see if we can't get through some ways to ease your child's stress. Let's see how you can become a buffer. So going through some of those things that Karen Young put with that resource that Stacy's looking for in the resources folder, let's do some exercise. What are some ways, if Johnny's feeling some sort of way today, or you're feeling some sort of way, or maybe we've looked at that temperament tool that Lori has shared with us. Let's just get up and stomp around the house a little bit, or let's go for a walk and go check the mail. Just doing some of those things that the parents and the child can do together that's an attachment to kind of get them away from that stress response in the body and maybe get some of those endorphins flowing.
And I think that Dr. Burke-Harris would really advocate for no one person can be the solution, that it really has to be a community solution. And, pediatricians are part of the solution. And she's really advocating for system-wide awareness and prevention in terms of school districts and policy making and, the bigger picture, the bigger systems. And so, going into a family that you know for one reason or another that there are ACEs there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be the one to be the solution or to fix it, but just to know that this family is part of a community and you're part of that community of support. But to know that there are systems and people and agencies that that are there to rely on and to refer to. That the family is not in the bubble, and neither are we. And it takes the whole village.
I feel like parents log in to look for resources and you get so much that because we've been through a lot of those resources and we know which ones are better or might be more appropriate for families, we can kind of guide that process. And Monica had talked about early as people were starting to log in about a collaboration she's working with through Johnson County Mental Health. So I'm sure we'll be getting more and more information about where we can send some of these families. In the meantime, we'll just give them activities in the home that we talked about with Dr. Tina Payne Bryson for attachment and helping the child feel safe and seen and secure. And you guys know more than you think you do about attachment.
I do feel like this has been awesome. And I think there's so much more to discuss in this topic. I would love to do a follow-up and just have a kind of a, roundtable discussion about this and what people are using specifically and what are some strategies. I mean, I feel like, there's definitely a hierarchy of things that you need to approach. Like if the family is really in kind of a crisis situation, what do we do? If the family is having a difficulty with, such and such, what do we do? I feel like we really should have some concrete things like lined out. And I know every child's different and every situation is different. We're going to have to use kind of our intuition and our experiences to kind of make the right referrals and do the right things. But I feel like this is a really awesome focus that you guys have had. And I really would love to explore it more because I think we're going to have, these families aren't going away and we're going to have more. I mean, every single person has had some kind of probably, difficult, some ACE. I mean, there's got to be an adverse experience in everyone's past. So I feel like this is, and especially with COVID and the pandemic, it's only going to get worse, or it's only going to be not get worse, but it's only going to be more obvious in our practice. So, I mean, I would be I would love to be in a roundtable discussion about what you guys have done, and maybe some of you have had more experience than others, with some of these situations. And I think expanding our knowledge would be awesome.
Or maybe even shrinking it down some. It's kind of like we've got this big umbrella and we've kind of talked about what is it, what are some things we can do, and then coming back down to just kind of looking at our population, that birth to 3, looking at local resources in our community, and maybe just some of those quick go-tos, activities that just almost feel natural. Yeah, we can definitely put some things together and come back to this. Monica's been nice enough to send the infant mental health team to some trainees and open up some things for us. So that's something our team can work on and get back to you guys on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And because I think that, sometimes during team meetings, someone might, from the mental health team, or someone who's kind of versed in that or has more experience, will tend to take the families who've had, her struggling a bit more. But I feel like we're all going to be, and I tend to take those families, but I have a way of approaching it that maybe isn't as effective as it should be, or maybe I need to be doing more. So, but I think all of us are going to be getting those families. So it's not going to be limited to just a certain, few who have an interest in that. I think it's probably, and we may get in there and find out more information, or maybe this is something we really need to look at while we're doing teaming. Maybe, the ACEs is something we should really talk about with families, so that therapists who feel comfortable with it, or not, will, have that ability to decide, to make that decision if it's something that they're able to get in there, even if we do just a mental picture about the ACEs like you guys did. Anyway,
That's a great point, Kay. So when we do some of that coaching stuff, maybe we need to kind of pop back up and see kind of where is the family? Why are they not doing some of the interactions with the child that we would expect? I hear a lot of times people say it's a lot of parent education, and maybe it's parent education more on the kind of the ACEs side. So we can definitely do some of those and even talk about some of those strategies that are in the resource folder.
And I, acknowledge that Monica doesn't want us to bring it up if we're not really versed in it. So we can't really go too much into detail, but even if we're just making a mental note that, okay, all these things have happened, I really need to focus on the attachment of this family, and
Exactly.
here are some things I can do, some practical things I can do,
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And one of the things I feel like has been real interesting over the last couple of years for us as an agency is we're truthfully one of the last early intervention programs in Kansas to have a social worker on staff who's seeing families. We've had social workers on staff who've acted as case managers and family service coordinators, but not providing services. And most early intervention programs have at least 2, if not 4. And I think having Leslie go through ABC, and I think having Hannah on staff, I think those have been, for me at least, really eye-opening about how far behind we are as an agency when it comes to helping families with some of these social emotional conversations even. And so that's really something that I want to focus on as we're moving forward too, is not only getting you guys training and more support, but also really looking at what are the needs of our families. And when we add a position at some point, does it need, or should it be another social worker or someone trained in something, or whatever that looks like. And I feel like we're going to continue doing things better and differently moving forward. But a lot of this has fallen on the shoulders of our speech therapists and early childhood special education teachers. And we all can honestly say, no, we're not trained. And that's why we've, again, relied so heavily upon Tracy and Debbie Landis in the past, and now Hannah. And I really feel like if we can grow that, then Tracy and Hannah won't have to deal with, 46 of us asking for help all the time. And they'll have more support for them too, because we're a big group. We see a lot of families, and like you all have said, they've all needed more this year than they ever have. And I think that's going to continue to be the case moving forward. And we want to make sure we're not burning anybody out and again, growing in this particular area.
Well, thank you guys for putting up with my technical difficulties and meeting with us today. We love to talk about all this stuff. So we'll definitely get some more together for follow-up.
And thanks again, Jana, for working through all of that. Appreciate it.
All right, guys, have a good weekend. Stay warm.
Thanks, Jana. Thanks,
Bye.
Stacy. This was great. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, Kay.
Thanks.